Hello everybody, Nurgleprobe here, and welcome back to another video. Today, it's April 28th, which means it's Tabletop Day! Woo! We're good? Good. Alright. So welcome back everybody. If you didn't already know, I'm a huge board game nerd. As you can see right there, quite a few board games. This is like half my collection showing. There's a lot of tinier board games down there. There's also a bunch of card game boxes over here with all kinds of different card games. And here are 40k bits and some pieces for different games like promos and stuff they couldn't fit in. Here's a Bulbasaur. Here's an Eevee, by the way. And also here are some big box board games that can't really fit into the shelf, like StarCraft, the board game, Blood Bowl and Space Hulk, all of that kind of jazz. Some expensive stuff. And here's some Warhammer armies. And here, down here, is actually a box filled with pieces to design board games with. So, you know, I know what I'm talking about. Well, at least, you know, if we count the fact that I'm a nerd and I know just a tiny bit about board games and that I've played at least a few of them. A few hundred of them. So it was kind of tricky to find out what I was going to talk about today, because it is International Tabletop Day, and I'm not doing any tabletop related today, so I thought I'd just record a video with something, but what should it be about? My top board games? First I thought about doing the thing that all the board game nerds are doing right now, which is, and I say nerds with all the love by the way, it's I'm a nerd, you're a nerd, it's fine, we can be nerds together. So it's a grid of 9 games with 3x3, and it's just their favorite games, and that's it. I thought that was something that I could do, but would it be interesting to just see the 9 games and I go through them quickly? Then I'd rather just do a video about each of the games and do it more, you know, in depth and tell you about the games that I love. So I didn't want to do that. I also thought about doing this video about the 10x10 challenge that a lot of board gamers do that became popular last year, which is basically you decide on 10 games that you want to play 10 times over a year. And that might sound easy for all you video gamers out there, but trust me, it takes some planning to get 10 games played 10 times, unless they're all small games maybe, or single player games. So I decided to not talk about that, because I'm gonna do a separate video about that completely on its own, where I talk about my 10x10 challenge, because you're intrigued which games are on my 10x10. Don't check my Instagram, because then you would find out before that video comes out. So I thought instead I'm gonna talk about my 3 favorite game mechanics. Ooh, game mechanics. I don't know why jazz hands and game mechanics is a thing. It's a thing now. It's a thing. Game mechanics. So starting from the top, oh wait, no, the bottom. We're starting from the bottom. We're going up the list. So at number 3, we have tabletop game terrain. Yes. Hey, okay. And the reason you're thinking I'm crazy is because tabletop terrain is not a mechanic. Nurgle, what the hell are you talking about? Hey, it's definitely a mechanic. Have you played tabletop games recently? There's rules for everything. So the reason this is my number 3 on the list is because it's one of my favorite things. So if you play tabletop war games like I do, you play them on big boards with terrains on it, preferably terrain that fits the game that you're playing, and everything about it is just awesome. And most tabletop games, or war games, have rules for how terrain affects your troops or units or robots or monsters or whatever you're playing with, and it's super interesting that you can build a board. It can be a forest, it can be a desert, it can be a city ruin, and everything about that board will change how your army works on that board. Depending on the game, of course, and what edition of certain games that you play. And that is why I decided to have tabletop terrain as my number 3. Because it's a mechanic. It has rules, it changes how you play, and it looks great. And that is really the big reason for it. I mean, just look here. This beautiful Necron summoning stone that I built for Warhammer 40k once upon a time, it's based on the Dawn of War building, if you have played that. This is the summoning stone. It's the same design. It's a bit thicker, not as high as that one, but still looks nice. And if you put this on a board with others, like rocks, formations, and buildings in this style, it looks good, and it's going to be a lot more fun to play. So you can even come up with your own rules for these, like house rules, some things about how the buildings and stuff interacts with your armies. It's going to be fun. That's my number 3, tabletop terrain. Foam board, by the way, if you are wondering. Moving on to number 2. So number 2 in the list of my favorite game mechanics of all time is social deduction. So if you don't know what social deduction games is about, it's basically about you and all the players sitting down around a table, on a couch, out in the yard, wherever you can sit and just hold a card most often, or depending on if you need a board or anything. And you need to figure out who the other players are. Usually there's a team or a player or something that stands out from the rest of the group, and everyone has hidden roles and teams that they need to keep secret from everyone else. And then there's always some kind of element that reveals some kind of information about who is who, or what kind of team that maybe someone is on. And then you need to start discussing with all the other players without accidentally revealing too much about yourself in the meantime. Unless you are supposed to. I am super aware that social deduction games are something that can be hard to enjoy if you're not playing with the right group. I have had a lot of duds with social deduction games, and it happens, because sometimes the whole group is not into it, they're not really grokking the game, they're not understanding how they should play it, because it's not a typical game where you know exactly how to play the first few times. Sometimes you need to learn and understand the dynamics of the game rules of that specific social deduction game to really be able to get into it and lie or tell the truth and vice versa. So if you want to try some of these games, my favorite ones are probably The Resistance, Mafia the Cuba, which I've not really ever had a super good game of yet, but I still enjoyed it the few times I've played it, and I bet if I found the right group for it, it's gonna be so good. And then Deception Murder in Hong Kong, which has a bit more game to it than the other ones. There's a lot going on the board, as well as you just having hidden roles. So I recommend that last one definitely if you are a board gamer that needs to have something else than just the social deduction part of a game. So shall we move on to my number 1? I don't know what I'm doing, but okay, number 1, here we go. My number 1 board game mechanic of all time is actually 2 parts. One needs the other, and the other needs the first, and you know what I mean, right? It's engine building / deck building. So deck building is one of my favorite game mechanics of all time. Every time I play a deck builder, I love it. I love starting with a simple deck of cards that you then buy cards to during the gameplay to make your deck better and play better and be cooler and do cooler things, get you more points, do more damage, or whatever you're trying to do. So instead of just playing these kind of simplistic cards all the time, it just gets cooler and better and more combo-y, and it's just... man, and every time you see new cards on the board, or if you see like new cards that you haven't played with before on the board, you're like, oh, I can try that now, and that combination with that card that is just appearing on the board now, it's, oh my god, it's so fun and awesome and it's amazing, and the games are often very quick to play. And the reason I mix in engine building to this is because engine building is such a big part of deck building. If you're building a deck, you're often building an engine that combos off other cards in your deck already. The reason it was so hard for me to pick between engine building and deck building is because engine building is a part of deck building. If you build a deck, it is an engine. You use different cards to combo off each other, and usually you want something that can help the other cards in your deck, so it becomes an engine in the end. But there are also other games that are just pure engine buildings without the deck building, like Imperial Settlers or 51st State, which is basically the same game, or Race for the Galaxy, one of my favorite games of all time, where you just get accumulate cards and abilities that then trigger off each other. And it's just this feeling of getting stronger that I really enjoy. It's almost like you're playing a mini campaign of a game. Instead of growing throughout each game that you're playing, you're doing it right there in one session. And it just feels so good. And you can often take different paths in these games as well. If they are well designed, you don't have to always aim for the same kind of engine. If they do that, it's probably not a very good engine building game. But if you feel like you can always try something new, that is interesting and it's fun, and I love that. So that was my top 3 board game mechanics. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know down in the comments, what are your favorite board game mechanics? Do you like some of the ones that I mentioned? Maybe you like some other mechanics more? Don't you like the mechanics I mentioned? Then let me know why, so I can ban you immediately. No, I'm not going to do that, but it would be interesting to know. Also, leave the likes and all the things down below. There's links to social medias and Twitch, where I stream games sometimes, and miniature painting and all that good stuff, so that you can see me do stuff like that. You know, terrain piece over there, though I don't do terrain. I do miniature painting. But, you know, still, maybe I'll do terrain one day again. If you want to, let me know that as well. Alright, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you next time. And remember, as always, play smart, play nice, and I'll see you online.